Hello everyone, and once again, welcome to Moya Mixup. This is part 6 of a series of videos where we've been having a visual look at the attack time of compressors. In this video, it's just a fun, quick video where we're going to have a look at the built-in compressors that come with Logic, and some of the classic compressors that come with Waves and a few other plug-in manufacturers, just to compare what the attack time actually does to a 1K test tone. So let's get on with it. Like I said, here we go. We've got the 1K test tone, which you'll have seen in video 1 if you've already watched that. If you haven't, the links are on the screen now. Okay, so if I just play this, yeah, you can see the meters. We've got 0 dB because it's normalized to 0 dB, and that's the material that we're going to be able to see the attack time carve itself into. It's literally just a 1K sine wave. Okay. Let's have a look, first of all, what we're going to be having a look at. Right, Logic comes with 6 analog compressors and 1 digital compressor. And we've seen the digital one before because that's the one we've been using. And the others are all selected within the same compressor GUI, but they all have different programs associated with them. This one is called the Studio VCA and is based on the Focusrite Red. This one's the Studio FET. I believe that's the Black 1176. This is the classic VCA and is based on the DBX 160. This is called the Vintage VCA and is based on the SSL G-Bus, I believe. This is the Vintage FET, which I believe is the 1176 Silver / Blue Face, Blue Stripe, whatever you want to call it. And this one is the Vintage Opto, which I believe is based on an LA2A, LA3A type compressor. So the classic VCA doesn't have an option for attack time, but the others do. I've just set them all to 10 milliseconds, which is the default value that they open up with. So I'm going to bounce out what 10 milliseconds looks like on all these compressors and the digital one, and we'll have a look at them side by side. So here they are, all bounced out. I'll just leave them on the screen for you so you can just have an overview of them. And then we'll have a look at them side by side. Okay, here they are side by side. So we've got the digital one here, which is in peak mode or RMS mode. And you can see 10 milliseconds in either are completely different. And this is the thing, 10 milliseconds on one compressor is not the same as 10 milliseconds on another compressor. I've said it in all the other videos. So if we just have a quick look here, we've got the Studio VCA, which is the Focusrite Red, and the Studio FET, which I believe is supposed to be an 1176. And as you can see, very similar to the digital one. The classic VCA, which is the SSL G-Bus, is probably most similar to that RMS digital compressor there, but the VCA compressor is not an RMS compressor. If we look at the RMS, we can see this sort of waiting period here where it makes its RMS calculations, where this doesn't have one. Okay, and we can see here this Vintage FET and this Vintage VCA, very similar, very fast 10 millisecond compared to the others. And this one I would also say is somewhere in between this fast one and this one here. It's very similar to that, but the initial transient is a lot taller in that one. So that's what they look like side by side. Now what we'll do is go and have a look at some classic compressors and just see what their attack times look like. So these are all the bouncers for the classic compressors, and I'll go through and just make some comments on them, but let's just have a look at what we've got first. So first of all, at the top there, we've got the Vertigo, which is the Brainworks based on the SSL G-Bus. We've got the NI Supercharger, which is this one, and it's got a punch mode, which makes quite a difference. We've got the V-Comp. Okay, it's part of the Waves bundle. We've got the NI Solid Fast Compressor, which is, I believe, based on the SSL channel strip. Next up, we've got SSLG, which most people will be familiar with as a bus compressor. Fairchild 660 and the Kramer Pi. Next, we've got the H-Comp, which is this one here, which also has a punch mode off this variable button here. We've got the R-Comp, and we've got the DBX 160 here. And this is the NI Solid again, which is the same as that one, the green one there. And finally, we've got the 1176s here, both in blue and black, which is this one here. The LA3A, which is this one. the LA2A, which is this one, and the API 2500, which is this one. All set to 10 milliseconds where possible. Some don't have a variable attack time on them, so it's what we get is what we get. So let's just get rid of these now, and I'll point out what I've noticed here. Well, first of all, the Fairchild itself is known for its tube saturation, valve saturation, whatever you want to call it, and its transformer saturation. And you can see distortion in that waveform. You can see what it's done to the waveform via that saturation. Okay, so that's one observation I've made there. The other thing to notice is the H-comp and supercharger punch modes. Now, the H-comp is very interesting because when you put the punch mode on, that's the H-comp normal, 10 milliseconds. Let's just go in and have a look. 10 milliseconds, yeah. And as soon as you add some punch to it, it actually makes the compressor wait for a period before it starts its attack cycle. The attack cycle's starting here. Okay, so if you want to know what the punch does, that's basically what it's doing. And it's very similar to the punch mode in the NI supercharger. That's the fixed standard mode of the NI supercharger, which is pretty fast and is sort of on par with sort of 1176 faster modes. This is the slow mode on the 1176. But the punch mode just makes it a really long attack. So that's one thing to notice. The other things I've noticed on here is the 1176s are both very similar to each other in slow mode. But when you've got all buttons in, there are some differences. The all buttons in, again, seem to make the compressor wait for a short period. Nothing like the punch modes. You see this waiting period here before a very fast attack time following it. Yeah. And the same with this one, but not to such a degree. A waiting period and then a very fast attack time following it. So that's what all buttons in does on the 1176. The LA2A and LA3A, very similar, probably identical to be honest. The 10 millisecond API 2500 attack time is quite slow compared to something like, well, any of them really. It's the kind of the slowest one on here. If I drag it over the SSLG there, because these are both bus compressors, you can see the API is a lot slower for the same value. So there's some little highlights I thought were quite interesting. I'll leave that shot on the screen for you. Remember, wherever possible, we've set to 10 milliseconds. It does actually say 10 milliseconds on the ones that have been set. The others are fixed attack times anyway, so you can't really grasp anything from that. One thing to take away from here, or two things really to take away from here. The attack time does not make the compressor wait for a period and then start doing some compression. It starts compressing straight away, and the attack period is the rate at which it gets to full compression. Okay, and that's different from compressor to compressor. It's not to do with the attack time. It's to do with the internal electronics of the compressor itself. The other thing to take away is the fact that if you set 10 milliseconds on a compressor, you have no real idea what that is doing. So you've got to set it by ear. Because as you can see, 10 milliseconds on this, and this, for example, is nothing like 10 milliseconds on that API. Completely different structures, completely different sound. Okay, that just about wraps it up. Just a quick fun video to finish off the video series. If you've watched them all, I hope you now at least have a visual idea of what the attack of a compressor is doing to a sound. And as a result, I hope that makes you make better compression choices. 100% always set your compressor attack time by ear. Your compressor attack time, if it's anything other than a fast peak mode, is generally going to be adding attack to a sound. So how much of that attack do you want? And think about how a sound is made. Usually the high frequencies are at the beginning of the sound. So if you want that slappy high frequency sound, more plectrum noise, more string noise, more beta noise from your kick drums and the snare sounds, that sort of thing, they'll be generally at the front of the sound and the body of it will be behind it. You're enhancing the front of the sound basically by turning the body of the sound down. So the quicker the attack time, the more slappy, because you'll get in the real high frequencies. And as you drag the attack time out, you'll start hearing the mids and low mids, and probably not the bass, because it's going to be turning down the bass no matter what you do. In certain sounds, depending on what sound you're doing, obviously a kick drum comes to mind straight away there. You're going to be turning the bass down in a kick drum sound. Okay, I hope that helps. And if you liked it, if you had fun, whatever, like, share, subscribe. Thank you for your time, and you will see me in the next video. All the best.